human trafficking is just a symptom of disconnection. There's not like a cure for it.
Sort of taking it to the ultimate bad place. The idea was that for each medical problem, what was actually going to be more impactful, a puppy dog or seeing the ER doctor? And it was very disturbing to find that sometimes puppy dog won.
Welcome to the Rethreading Lives podcast, where we talk about how to take your threads of harm and through the rethreaded process, transform them into something that actually helps you reach your potential. We'll talk with different leaders in our city and our country and find out what they're doing. You'll walk away from listening to this podcast with useful insights and captivating stories on how you yourself can rethread your life and your business. I'm Kristen Keene, and this is the Rethreading Lives podcast. Welcome to the Rethreading Lives podcast, where we talk about how to harness the 5 powers to reach your potential. And today we have a very special guest, Dr. Joe, who is a neurologist and also runs his own podcast on WJCT that is nationally broadcasted. What's health got to do with it? And I have actually been a guest on your podcast. I don't remember, though, how we first got connected.
I think, Kristen, we got connected because you had done a fantastic appearance with First Coast Connect with Melissa Ross.
Melissa Ross, yeah.
And I share a producer with that show.
Okay.
And they said, you have to have Kristen on,
Okay.
on a health-related show because of the work that you do and Rethreaded. And that's how it kind of connected.
Cool.
I remember it. We were doing a show about, it was interesting. It was about dermatology and human trafficking, believe it or not.
Clear connections there.
But it was like an unusual story, and you were the second part of the guest list. But on that show, it was fascinating. We had a young journalist who was talking about how she's based in Phoenix, and they had just hosted the Super Bowl. And during Super Bowls, there's this huge human trafficking thing that occurs, and how it connected to her, because she was wanting to be a dermatologist, is looking at people who work to eliminate tattoos that are placed on people to brand them to this work, and how these dermatologists go out to try to eliminate and erase this physical brand. I know this, I'm way off topic.
No, this is great. This is a great place to start.
And that is how I kind of started
That's
that
right.
whole world of it. And then you brought us into the more hopeful tone, which is what we, not studying the problem, which we know it is, but more, what do you do once you confront it and you see it? But there was an interesting kind of show, and that's how we kind of got started. That's how I ended up meeting you when you were so wonderful to be a guest on our show.
And it was so fun. And I mean, that can kind of go into what we're talking about. I mean, the rethreaded process, which is what this is about, is how do hard things happen to you and you overcome them? And you kind of ask the same question that probably so many people ask in life. This hard thing happened to me. Now, what do I do? And so that's what we've been doing for the past couple years, is harnessing all this wisdom that we watch our women go through these super horrible, hard things. And after years and all this healing, they come out on the other side. Sometimes they will say out loud I am thankful this happened to me because of the person I am today. And it just amazes me.
That is truly finding the silver lining in such a very dark situation. I have to admit, I often don't get the opportunity to see when folks get to the other side, not because people don't make it, but because in general in medicine, oftentimes we're there at more in an acute, sudden, like that moment of this is really happening type of situation. I'm not an ER doctor, but but I've been around enough over my many decades of practice in the world of neurology where you do encounter a lot of different things. And oftentimes I see things at the front end, which is right in the hospital and in acute setting, as I mentioned, not so much when,
The
you
end.
don't need to see someone
Yeah.
or you get to that point.
Yeah, that's why people ask me a lot, like, how can you do this job? And I'm like, they're like, isn't it just so sad every day? And I was like, no, it's inspiring every day. Some of our women's stories I don't even know. I just know that it was hard and they are so happy to be here, and watching them navigate their healing is inspiring every day. So can you walk me back? Can you talk to me, what is your medical background in neurology? Like, what did you still do?
Yeah. So I have been a neurologist. God, I don't want to say how long, but let's just say for a long time, but many decades. I started out where if I started out, my training was in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, and there you did general neurology, and training for neurologists means you do a year of what's called general medicine, and then you do 3 years past that of general neurology, which is stroke, migraine, concussion, tumors, MS, epilepsy, seizures. So did that, then an additional 2 years of training in a very specific area, in seizures, epilepsy, reading, brainwave studies, things of that sort. And that was in Philly. And I stayed in Philly for just a few years after that fellowship. And then I spent the vast majority of my career in Phoenix, Scottsdale at Mayo Clinic. And I still practice. I do some practice over in Phoenix, Scottsdale. I actually commute there. Don't ask me why,
Okay.
but it's just one of those things that just works because I've been there for so long, and I practice here. And it's just a way of kind of maintaining both locations. Basically, I get to see a lot of patients that have everything from difficult to manage epilepsy to migraines, to whatever the issue may be, to try to help them out. Oftentimes I try to navigate people to get them to, if they need to get to a super specialist. I used to be super specialist in epilepsy. I guess I'll always be that. Yeah. I used to like guide people through a point if they had seizures to see, can we get medications? Are they surgical? Do they need a brain pacemaker? Stuff like that.
Cool.
But now I'd say I'm more the navigator than the one who is in the throes of this very complicated endpoint, mostly because of timing of my career and other pursuits, like the show that you mentioned. This is how I kind of balance out these different areas.
Confession. I right now I'm in the middle of watching a lot of Grey's Anatomy.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know why.
Oh God.
I know.
I do like it. I mean, the music and narration.
Oh,
is
the
great.
music. It's funny you say that because I have been having those thoughts. I was like, man, this is good music in here. So there's Dr. McDreamy. He's a neurosurgeon.
Yes. Yeah.
But a neurologist doesn't you don't go inside. You're testing waves and
Right.
medicine and external. You're not in there like that, like McDreamy.
No, I'm not. Oh, so many things to say to that. But I'll just say I'm not the neurosurgeon who's actually gonna be drilling the hole in the head and doing things of that sort. So no, not in his character, but more the one who gets you to that person. In other words, what's going on? Is this something we can manage with medications? Someone who will see them after that surgery. I mean, the truth is on Grey's Anatomy, as much as, half the fun is because the patients are only there to help the relationships, not to get better.
I know.
So,
And as soon as the words come out of the surgeon's mouth, this is an easy procedure, you know that character is going to die.
exactly. And
given.
so I get to be the one who sees them in follow-up.
Okay.
And I hear about their procedure, but I did not get to deal with
You
Dr.
didn't get to do it.
McCreevy or Meredith or any of the team. I can't believe I know these characters.
I love it.
But my wife loves that show, so that's my excuse for now. Right
Oh
now.
my gosh. Oh.
See, I won't.
I've just been having it on the background. I never realized how much it affected the way that I see medicine. I'm also on the board of a hospital here.
Okay.
And even watching Grey's Anatomy is affecting my boredom. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I might need to switch television shows to something a little more realistic about medicine.
Well, all I will say is that to kind of dispel anything about Grey's Anatomy, I do remember there was one episode where she did do an emergency burr hole, which is
Yes.
on a plane. And then I remember I have yet, and I fly a lot, seen that occur. But okay. But I found it entertaining.
It's totally entertaining.
So that's all my line of like, let's get it straight. But I do like the characters, and I do like it's fun TV to watch.
It's fun TV.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
It's fun TV. It's ridiculous. So what, in your observations as a doctor, so the Rethreaded process is made up of 5, we call them powers, is deeply knowing your purpose. So this is not your job. This isn't your roles. This is like your inner making. It's almost like you can't help it.
Right.
That's who you're created to be. You can't, it doesn't change based on your circumstances, just there. Community, which are the people that call out your purpose. They have your back. Time. That's a rough one for me, which is your currency in life to reach your potential, right? It goes away. And once you spend it, you don't get it back. Openness, which is the ability to be honest and vulnerable, and vision. So where am I going? And is the vision so strong that it will help me move through discomfort? So in your medical world, you deal with people that are kind of in hard things. So how do you see, like, what do you see in patients as they navigate this?
I think what I see with patients is it varies so much with people from all the individual ones. So when you ask me that question, I'm like, I have pictures of almost different folks in my mind, because I'll give them the spectrum. On one, I see those that are just panicked to death and just cannot seem to move forward. I see the opposite end of like, I'll do anything to move forward. And then I always worry about that. And then the middle, which is variations on those two themes of folks who just want to make it to the next day and not thinking about what the ultimate outcome is. My sense of all of this is that it's like, when something's happening to you or you've gone through something, if you've seen someone like me, that means something has occurred. And at some point there's an element of shock, disbelief, denial. Then you go into this middle of like, why me? And then there's this element of like, how do I get out of this? Like that sense of acceptance. It's almost like those Kubler-Ross stages of like, when you're told about a death and you get to the place of acceptance. I think that's, as I think back on people, I do see that element of it, and it's all in where they are in these journeys with me, because in a lot of cases where I saw in people who had these horrible to manage, difficult to treat epilepsies or seizure conditions, it often started with something. It could have been a trauma, it could have been a tumor, it could have been a stroke, and there's a suddenness, there's a violation of like, this can't be happening, to a place, if we get them to the right place, if we have a right treatment, of acceptance and moving on to the place where this is now in your rearview mirror and you're not having to see someone like me, or it's not the top of mind and it's their work is, or my life is, and this is just
part of it.
So be it. I'm always I'm always seeing people on those journeys of how to put whatever that medical condition they're seeing me for in the rearview mirror. And just, it depends on where it is. And I'm always amazed of how unique everyone is. I know that sounds
no,
but
nope.
Unique in just how they manage it and see it. And I'm always trying to read the room, if you will, just to make sure I meet them where they are, so that I'm not pushing, or I'm just trying to kind of let's go. Let's see how we're going to walk it out. Here's information, here's stuff, so that we can get you to that place.
So you're working with adults that usually so it's not like they, like, as a child had epilepsy, something's happened and they're adult. Oh my, and
these are all
disruptive.
Adults. All adults.
Oh my goodness.
So it's like, I'll either see the first seizure patient or someone who's had it all their life or something in that manner, and trying to move them from that place of when they first see you to, again, this place of acceptance. This is as good as it gets. Maybe it's perfect, but we're in the rearview mirror. You graduate, you'll see me in a year. That's the best I can tell someone.
Well, it is like our ladies, right? We, as part of the Rethreaded process, the ultimate goal of it is for you to take responsibility. Even if that's the hardest thing that I keep having these discussions about. I mean, like human trafficking, women did not choose it. Right. Like, it happened to them. It's kind of like when you get sick, right? It happens to you and you did not choose it. And yet you are now, it is your responsibility to handle it. And that's a whole process in itself, I think.
It's so interesting you say that. When I listen, and I'll stick to the epilepsy seizure world, I've heard at all these big gatherings of meetings where patients come together and talk about it, and it's almost close to verbatim to what you just said. In every one of those, they will say, I didn't choose epilepsy. Epilepsy chose me. I don't have a choice. Now I have to manage it, and manage it in a way that I can just move on with my life. But it is literally the disease becomes the evil person, or the thing that just came in and did this to you. And now they have to,
yeah,
it's there.
It's there.
And that's the story. And in many ways, that's why when you describe that process, I smiled. I go, my goodness, this is like a version of what we do. I mean, this is what medicine is. With the differences, pharmaceuticals stick the pills in, but to help out, or surgery or whatever. But that's what medicine is, or at least it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Just to get you there. What I love about the Rethreaded process that medicine now is beginning to just get its fingers into is this concept of the determinants of health. Used to be you'd only go and you see a doctor, get a diagnosis, prescription, take it, see ya. Now the thought is, well, do you need to be on the pills? Couldn't we do this with changing what you eat? What about the community around them? Can you get to the right place? Do they have work? Is that the issue? That, maybe it's because they have not so good insurance, or they don't have money, and you know what I mean? It's like all these other variables that never used to be in the purview of medicine is now people are beginning to realize, well, that's what gets you to being healthy. And that's why I loved when you were talking about the process. You offer a community part, which I still can't write a prescription for eat better.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Ditch the burger, not like, no more X. Do this. That piece, now we're just it's embarrassing. It shouldn't be just, but now we're just beginning to understand this is crucial for anything. That community, that at the level of engagement, that I don't think that we do very well in modern healthcare, despite the fact we spend trillions of dollars.
So what I wonder, based on my Grey's Anatomy experience, no, I'm just kidding.
Oh dear. I like kidding. Chicago Med better, by the way. So
seen it. So maybe that's
okay,
the next
so
one.
You catch that
one. But I do work with people who work with people in healthcare. And my parents were in healthcare, and my experience in healthcare, is kind of like, is there a shift in the doctors, like the doctors and the nurses taking care of themselves so they can take care of patients? I see it going both ways, actually. I see it like doctors are now, they have to speed up and see everyone. Nurses have to see everyone. There's all this pressure to see patient after patient after patient. But then I also see maybe among doctors, like, this isn't working for us. And maybe is that part of the shift that's happening? Like, I lost my purpose. All I'm doing is working. I mean, am I on to something at all on that?
You are 100% on. And probably one of the biggest issues within the healthcare workforce is the feeling that they're burnt out, exhausted. Pandemic did this, but it was already happening before pandemic. It's just, pandemic just lit a fuse. And now the feeling is, this does not work. 10 minutes with someone, and then the next patient and next patient. And the pressure is just so hard that either people are rethinking what they choose to do, trying to be more clever in how they do it. And I see it in all the med students that are coming up, because what someone like me, who's, I'd say, God, I hate saying this, more end career because I hate that word, but I'll say it here to you, my friend. Yet more end career on the medical front versus the beginning. When I was in med school, I hate that starting that. For me to bring up my well-being, I would have been laughed at.
Really?
There was no sense that it goes, no, this is, the patient is the center. This is the work. This is a calling. It's a privilege, and it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not about you. So if you don't sleep for 36 hours, tough. But what about, I haven't eaten, tough. That's the job. And that's how life was. And it didn't matter. And for years, it went, and suddenly, now with a whole new generation, they're saying, no, this is crazy. Who said that it's okay to not sleep? And now there's all this research, which we should have been paying attention to, showing us that, well, if you don't sleep, you can't think. You fall into despair. You burn out easier. If you don't watch what you're eating, if you don't exercise, this is just too much. And so now our own research is saying you have to find a different way. and so you have two groups of us. You have people who are in a certain generation like me, and you have this newer generation. And here we are, finding ourselves under this very interesting moment. So I think there is a big change. You're picking up on it exactly where it is, but people are sick of the system. People are sick of the way it's been. And the truth is, if you have tired people, all you get is
Yeah.
no one who's compassionate, not when you're in your worst moment. The last thing you want to see is someone who's like yawning or not listening to you at your worst moment when you're in the hospital or something along those lines.
And I have a sphere usually that I talk about. So when you're pouring into all your elements, your sphere is big and you can hold life really well, but then you pressure time, your capacity decreases. I know. And there's this conundrum in the hospital that I feel like is happening, is that doctors and nurses have now been educated about human trafficking, but there's still this pressure, and it's not, I don't think it's from lack of effort or lack of wanting to. There's just pressure, like when your 25th addict comes through the door, and it is easier to dismiss them and not see them and talk to them and take the time because of all that pressure all the time. So sometimes I feel like I'm asking, I almost feel like the doctors and the nurses need their hearts taken care of so that our women that are victims of human trafficking, when they come in the hospital, can be seen. I don't know how to fix that yet. But
you bring up a good point. I have to admit, until I did the show that I met you on, that we referenced at the beginning, I thought it like it's one of those things that I know of in passing, but I did not think about it the way I probably should. And that's a type of thing that the reason that's the case is because of what you just said. You have this pressure. They ask you, okay, here's a new guideline, and here's a new guideline, and here's a new guideline. So
yes.
So like, how do you put it in there? No, that's the job. That's the work. And we have a lot of tools now, from technology and phones that I once upon a time I couldn't walk in and have phone with me because they didn't exist. And so you had to have everything written down, and I had everything on index cards, were my pre-iPhone world. and if I was going to see a patient and I'm like, oh my God, I hadn't remembered this is in those early days. I remember going into, God, this is so Grey's Anatomy, going into a closet to study the card before I walked into the patient room. I can't believe I'm telling you this. Just so that I would sound very coherent, and I'd like, oh yeah, this is what it is. So there are tools to help us, but what you're saying is right. There's so much out there, and this is an issue. This is a huge, important issue, but it competes
with everything else.
And so, and yet this is a vulnerable situation, and it's hard to kind of, how do you put the signal around it to help? But yeah, people who are feeling okay when they're working, that's you want them to be in tip-top shape.
Yeah, because their job is hard. What a doctor holds is hard. I've never been in that position, though, so I don't fully understand. But my friend is married to like a heart surgeon, and the policy is if an addict comes in and you've already revived them 3 times, you can't revive them again. So like the doctor carries that. Like, yes. I am not allowed to do my job on this person. And all we call it the paradoxes, the paradox, the yuck and the yay.
Yeah.
And how do you hold that as a doctor and give great service? And I don't know.
I wish that is the part that we are all struggling to do. At the end, you do have to find it in yourself to kind of deliver it. It's still, as I said, it's still a privilege when you're able to help and guide people. But yeah, when policies come out and realities hit, and you can have these great therapies that are available, but if you don't have insurance, you can't access them. It really gets to you, and you realize this has got to change, but how?
How?
And that's the question we're all wrestling with, if
It
you
is.
will.
It is. What have you found in your journey as a doctor that has helped keep essentially keep your heart open, connected to your purpose, a vision for your life? Like, what are some things that you've learned towards your end stage career?
Thank you. I guess the biggest lesson I'd have to say that helps me to ground is I try to always remember how I want to be treated
Mm-hmm.
and how my family wants to be treated.
Mm.
Now, I come from a large Cuban family
Really?
on my side. Yeah.
Cool.
So let's just say like half of Thanksgivings were always like, consultations that I didn't want to be doing because you're running into the family situation like that. And so how it relates to all of this is I'd listen because half the time it was because the person telling me this, they weren't seen or listened to.
Yeah.
And no, they may not have been a trafficking person who's had to undergo something that horrible, but they weren't listened.
Yeah.
It's like ignored. And so they're coming to me for like that extra either validation or element. So to me, the principal thing was a very pragmatic one. It was like, how would I want myself or a family member to be treated? Because that is pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I became a neurologist because I was in a situation where I had this horrible thing happen to me when I was in med school, where I had a hemorrhage in the brain. This is like one of those weird stories.
This is like a Grey's Anatomy episode.
It can happen, yeah. Well, my family always did say that our lives were like a telenovela. So yeah, I guess this fits. This fits in that direction, but it fits in that whole larger scheme. But during med school, I had a situation where I was in the middle of a test, and it's a developmental thing that it started bleeding in the brain. And it was serious. It was life-threatening. I didn't know. I just had a bad headache. I assumed it was stress. I have very little memory. My wife is a nurse. God bless her. She knew something was wrong because I wasn't acting right that night after the test. And she takes me to an emergency room in New Orleans. I had very bad health insurance. It was an HMO of a certain age, and it's like there's nothing health maintenance about it. I'll put it that way. And as she tells it, she drove past all these great neurosurgical centers to go to the place that they had to go to. When she gets there, the ER doctor, and this is where it gets to what you were saying, proceeds to tell her without examining me, other than seeing that I'm not with it. He goes, "You have to accept the fact that your husband is a second-year medical student who's under a lot of stress. And this is all cocaine. I've seen it before. He hadn't done a drug test or anything. This is all cocaine. You have to accept that he has." Right?
Shut up. This is a real story.
I am not. How I wish it wasn't a real.
The doctor told your wife.
Yes.
He's addicted to cocaine.
There was no urine test, no blood test, but he'd seen it many times before in an
Wow.
And so she then you're out of your mind. Next thing you know, I'm slowly kind of worsening, and she luckily got a family member to help. And finally, when someone did a CAT scan, they saw the blood, and then I needed to go to emergency surgery. Long story short, my next memory, so I have no memory. This is my wife's memories because I don't know what happened. I'm waking up in a recovery room, and I'm being told out of nowhere that, hey, hi, Mr. Sirven, I wasn't doctor then. You're at X recovery room. You've just had brain surgery. And it was like talk about what in the world. But it started a journey of 2 months in the hospital.
2 months.
Because it got complicated and infectious, but everything turned out. Here I am. But the point is, it was probably the best medical education I could have ever had, because at that moment I got to see this is how you present to someone when you're in a state of disbelief. This is what, when you can't get an IV in, or when, what are the things that stay with you? Nursing shift or with hospital life. So it always got back to your original question. Well, it's how I wanted to be treated. We had wonderful care and we had nightmarish care. I got to see the full spectrum of how it all turned out. But there's a story of here, even in an emergency, people will invent their own narratives.
Yeah, probably because they saw it so many times, and they're just like, "Oh, you must be a crack addict." Yeah,
this is number so and
yes.
so, and that's it gets to that point.
Yeah,
this is what happens when you do burn out and you stop seeing people as people, and it's just next.
Which I think that our women have shared stories. I mean, they share stories, but I think across the board, I would say the most painful situations is when people don't see them. Like, we had this conversation about what would you want the police to say or the hospital person to say, and they're like, I want them to ask my name and about my kids and see me and see through all my circumstances. And yeah. It's what we all want, right?
That's all. Your name, just to kind of be acknowledged.
Yes.
For whatever it is that's happened. And that, I think, is the element that I try to remind everyone that either I'm teaching or to do. I'm not saying I'm, people, I'm still human, and you're busy and you do get caught up, but that's everything.
It's everything.
Because to me, I still remember the touch or the look, just a certain element of how people presented. And I also remember, when someone, I remember there was one person, I begged my wife, please don't get her assigned to me, for nursing, because I remember she says, because I was a very difficult to put in IV stick. And I remember I could eat that night because she goes, oh, I'm glad to have you, but I'm going to get that IV in. And I was like, I remember when she walked out, I told her, I was like, dear God, I won't survive. Do you know how painful that is? Anyway. That's the type of stuff you just want to get through right there.
Well, I mean, some of our I'm thinking of this one woman in particular. She said her worst experience was in an emergency room in a hospital from a nurse. Yeah. Just, but it goes back to the same thing. There's no blame on that nurse, but the way she was treated was vile. And that's our system. How do we create a medical system that everyone is seen, right? You can't see other people if you're not seen. That's very hard to do.
If you had to put it in a policy way or a teaching way, is how do you teach or pick people who are empathetic?
Who are empathetic.
And everything you just described is the lack of it. Or in the positive cases, like, tons of it. There are some places, especially now, all these schools, from nursing school to PA, nurse practitioner, med school, they're so hyper competitive. The key for these admissions groups to kind of, as we get, and this does not matter what program you go to, they're all that competitive these days, isn't so much about the book smart, because that's what people tend to choose. But what about the people smart? That their empathy, that they will listen, that they will care, as opposed to be able to recite, the 20 symptoms of PTSD or trauma or concussion. I can, sadly, ChatGPT can do that for me now.
That's so true. You don't have to be in the closet anymore.
Exactly. You remembered. Yes, that's right. I would have loved it at that point. But still looking someone in the eye and saying, I'm going to help you. I'm going to try to, see what we can do. That's the key. And it's either that could be taught, but you also have to be open to it. And that's, I think, is going to be where we look at our next generation of students and practitioners. How do you bring that humanity back? I find it hopeful, because what I keep seeing from the newest generations of students of all health professionals is how they want to do this. They want to help. They want to change. They do want to do that. The big question is, how do you work it against the system and its pressures and its approaches? And that's what has to adjust, if you will.
So I get to train a group of medical residents at the end of this month.
How cool.
So what's your advice to teach them as they're going through this?
I'd want to make sure, my advice is like assess or get a sense of the listening skills, of just trying to find ways to either listen or empathize, and to really try to find that thing that connects them. For me, as I said, it was a personal experience, either family or myself, that connected me to this larger scale, and still does. I think that's what has to happen, because until we have robots that replace the entire healthcare system and all that, it's still people, and that way people will still respond to how they connect to this. It's your grandmother, your sister, your brother, your mom. Those are the things that just remind us we're all in it. That's the simplest way.
And that's how we've been even teaching it. I mean, that's how we teach on human trafficking, is like, this is in your neighborhood. It's to our moms, our sisters. Like, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't, to get people to move in empathy.
That would be my best advice. And just as you're listening to them or talking to them, I always try to do is try to picture these people, not when they're seeing you in class at that moment or whatever teaching, but pretend it's 2 a.m. And because that's when you always run into everyone. Something about 2 a.m. in the emergency room. There's something magical.
There is. Nothing good happens after midnight.
There you go.
Because they all end up in the emergency room at 2.
So you want to say it's 2 a.m. Can this person talk to me in a nice, gentle way? That's the ultimate test. But if they can't do it when it's 2 p.m. and they're yawning, 2 a.m. is going to be a bigger problem.
It's going to be a problem.
But that's when everything happens. In all seriousness, it never seems to occur on normal hours.
That is true. What in your, who like has kind of, has anyone modeled this for you?
I would say I've had the honor and privilege of working in a lot of different hospitals across the U.S. over my training. And there was always someone at any of these hospitals that you would just be like, that's who I want to see. That's who I want to be, or that's who I want to see. I can't say there's one, but I would say I've met so many that have they just know how to do it. Listen, see you, respond, the approach. And I've just tried to take what I see in those moments when I had the opportunity to work with them or colleagues that I see, and just, can I do that? Can I be that person? Or take that habit, or use that phrase, or use that question to learn how to get to that truth for that person. That's how I kind of view it. I haven't had one person that sticks out to me because I think I've had so many different locations.
Which is so good.
I'm actually more hopeful and optimistic because they exist everywhere. There wasn't a place that they didn't exist, even in the craziest of environments. I would just see like some people.
Even when you were on crack cocaine in the hospital.
According to the erroneous diagnosis, I might add. But yes, there were good people at that hospital. I don't want to talk about that person, but because that doesn't count. But there were others.
Everywhere there's good.
There was others. And that's the positive. You can find them anywhere. It's just, I mean, most people in medicine, they do want to do well. They want to do good. But you hit on something.
Yeah.
It's just like, are they in the right place to be able to execute at their best?
Yeah. Which is kind of the questions of all systems, right? Of all businesses.
Exactly.
I mean,
it's just the nature of the beast right now.
I went to I heard a speaker talking. I mean, I'm on the board of the hospital, like I was saying. So it's amazing what I'm learning, just the complexity of healthcare. And the speaker was talking, and he said, he kind of summed up healthcare because he kind of summed up Rethreaded too. He's like, it is the system that has to be systemized, but serves individuals. So it's every single person will react differently. They need different care. They need individualized care. And we're making a system built around extremely individual needs. I mean, it's kind of the paradox of healthcare, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's actually well put, because that is true. You do want to have that individualized vibe, but you have to do it within that constraint. I mean, there are appointments, there are hours, there's assignments,
and there's financial that you have to have money to provide healthcare, and I mean, it is just.
It's something, you know, for all the stuff that we talk about the American healthcare system, and I know there clearly are problems with the access and stuff, but there are problems in so many others. I always think I had the pleasure of being in the UK, not to work, but to visit. They have a great system where you don't have to have insurance and everyone gets cared for and things of that sort. But they're still complaining about the lines, about not getting quick treatment, the arguments I was hearing about what are happening here. Do you spot this? Do you know this? They're having the same debates. So, and that's supposedly in a place with 100% access. So this has not been perfect no matter what, because even in systems that are supposedly
fair and equal, and
they still have their issues.
Because it's a system trying to serve individuals. Yeah. And again, the system can't see people, but people can.
Exactly. So that's the focus. It should be on that human connection, the people to people connection. That is really the only element, because that's what gets things done and moving in a way that at least you feel that you were taken care of in some way.
Yeah, really. So what on the patient end, as you watch your patients, how do you see going through this thing change them?
What I see it, and again, it depends on where they are. In some cases, I just see the frustration, and the anxiety, sometimes mood issues like depression. If things are not, if it's just like, things are not going well and things are just falling apart. On the other side of this, so I always have both sides in my head. The other side, when things work out really well, I see the alleviation of those exact same things. One of the things that I've really come to see in everything I do from a neurological perspective is that oftentimes all of them are married to a mood cousin. Anxiousness, the depression I just mentioned, versions of all of this. And one of the things that I think took me years to understand is that things aren't always in one direction, but it goes up and down. I'll see them for one visit and everything is a disaster. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, well, let's do this, fix it. And then I see them next time, it's the best that I've ever seen them. My point is, it doesn't always just go straight and simple and no rocks or barriers, but you can see things go completely backwards. And then you give it time.
Ooh,
That
time.
word,
There's that time. Oh,
and then all of a sudden, oh, look at this.
Time.
And time is, it's cruel because you want to rush it and you can't. And yet that's what we find. That's the ultimate medicine that no one wants to talk about because you can't bill for it. You can't do anything.
You can't bill for it.
I mean, it's like a tincture of time is what one of my professors once told me is the ultimate treatment, because it gives you the perspective and that ability that you're past that immediate rough patch, and it's given the opportunity to perhaps have that person move on. Sometimes it doesn't help, but in some cases, that little bit of time for certain conditions, it's everything.
It's what you need.
It really is.
What do you, because I think about this a lot, is that people, I don't really like time. I'm very impatient. Yeah. But what I'm finding, the more that I examine myself and then talk to people who've gone through hard things, is that one of the scariest parts is there's so much unknown. And if you're going to take the time to heal, that means you have to be able to tolerate the unknown for a long time and go through it.
There's not a better way of placing it. Not knowing is something that none of us are very good at. It's not an easy place to be. Too many, we're so planned, and I get it. I hate the unknown. I hate the unknown. To really, but sometimes embracing it it's so easy to say,
Right.
but is the way forward, which is one day at a time. Let's see how this goes. When I say that with some, when I'll say some patients say, so easy for you to say, I'm like, but it's true.
It's true. Sorry. And I'm like, I can see like our women's stories. If you, on the podcast, we had this woman, Stephanie, who's incredible. She's left us and doing amazing things, but she figured out time, right? She ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for 6 months and saved and restored relationship with her family over a course of 3 years.
Wow.
Like she somehow understood exactly what you said. It's day by day. And that's it. The day by day, and have the patience to let the day by day build in, to 3 years of restoration. I mean, that is strength, it's amazing.
It is amazing. And that's the element. You almost have to find that element that distracts you from your thoughts of looking, oh, I'm not there yet.
I'm not there.
Until that moment you turn back and you're like, how did I get here? And that's the magic moment. But that distraction, whatever that may be, positive distraction, I might add.
So
we have to be there.
What is it for you? Like, how are you able to find the patience to let your patients, I mean, I would assume it as a doctor too, on your end, there would be a pressure to heal them quick, like, and not to push that. And like, ooh.
Yeah.
I guess I struggle with that as like a leader in the organization. I just kind of want to push them through the healing but you can't.
You can't. And those are where the days get frustrating because I'm like, I don't want to be the one who's like, why aren't you choosing to do this? Do this, because then you lose them. I don't know where. I think the strength in those moments is knowing that they will, when they're ready. Like there's something in the back of my mind that always says, when they're ready, they'll be ready. Keep voicing it. It's like when the rhythms or the patterns of something. I think I recognize this. Let's just keep going. I'm not saying it's easy all the time, but it can be very frustrating when you leave for the day. You're like, did I do anything today? I mean, that there was this book. I interviewed an author of an ER doctor. It just hit me on that. And he had a game. It's a very darkish game, but he had a game when he was on shift for the emergency room that he and the med student and a resident would play. And the issue would be puppy dog or ER. And the idea was that for each medical problem, what was actually going to be more impactful for the patient?
Oh.
A puppy dog or seeing the ER doctor?
Oh.
And what it was very disturbing to find that sometimes puppy dog won, even though you had this incredible shift and you had done all these things, but the puppy dog probably would have been better for a moment of peace, bliss, as opposed to all that we do. Ooh. But it told me...
It's a great thing to ask.
Right? I mean, it's like, which of this, because it's like, do you need the look, the soulful look, the compassion, that moment of wonder, like you feel the feeling when you see the little puppy.
The little puppy.
Versus, I'm going to intubate you. I'm going to do all this stuff.
Fix you.
Right. And that's very, it's like, it's hard. So and that's the healthcare system. That anecdote never, I mean, I do a lot of these book interviews. That one never left me.
Wow.
Because I thought, he's right. I mean, sometimes because he was talking about how they had done all this stuff to save lives. At the end, they prolonged these very difficult situations which weren't going anywhere. But in some cases, maybe a different thing is needed. And I think is the art of knowing which one is which.
So true.
you know. But I never do that. Puppy dog versus empathetic. I mean, when you can see me, you're not. I'm not pulling out a dog. Just right to say that you're gonna feel fine. So I'm not a huckster that way.
Every time you don't know what to do, you're like,
I mean, I'd love to do that. That sounds very Grey's Anatomy, right?
puppy.
But so I may not do very well.
I feel like that advice though can go into parenting,
Yes.
into being a boss. Does the person in front of you need a puppy dog right now, or do they need to be fixed? That is some good.
I'm a dog person, so I'm going to pick that puppy dog most of the time. But in reality, it just gets us back. You know, what is it? Do you need the science, or do you need, like, you know, that moment of just wonderment or connection or just acceptance of someone who's going to just take you as you? And I think that's what they were trying to say.
Yeah,
that's what we need more of.
That's what we need more of, and it goes. I mean, at Rethreaded, we're talking about human trafficking is just a symptom of disconnection. It's not. We're not gonna. There's not like a cure for it, it's a symptom of the dehumanization of people and trauma passed on and addiction and people taking advantage of people. I mean, just it's
like taking it to the ultimate bad place.
Yeah.
And I never thought of it that way, but yeah, that is right. It's just changing how you view someone beneath you because you don't know them and they must fit whatever pattern you've made up. It'll be there. I think that's just one of those, sadly, one of the dark parts of human nature that doesn't excuse it. It just means we have to always try to find a way to appeal to the better nature that maybe I'm an over optimist that I do believe is there for everyone.
I do too, though.
Even when people are vilified, I do think there's something. I may be wrong there, but
I know, because I agree too. Because I think about, I am also the same, like when we have this criminal justice system that punishes instead of drawing out goodness. And I don't know, I'm also, I believe inside. Yeah.
It's just sometimes it's very hard. And I don't know the answer or how to get there. I do believe in some level of like consequence. I just don't know what that looks like.
Can it be a puppy dog and a fix?
Would that be nice?
Yeah. What do you have any training in trauma and the way it works in your brain and all that good stuff and knowledge of that part of this conversation?
Not, I've had some, but I wouldn't say I'm an expert in it. I know how trauma to brain affects people, that it can lead, and it just depends on how that trauma looks like. I used to think, if you hit your head, you hit, it's all the same, but people's reactions to it are quite different. I will say that how the trauma is, and I'm speaking of a physical energy, is going to be very important to know, because you can predict patterns of certain things, whether it's memory deficits or mood issues, depending on locations and what's involved. I am always amazed that two people can have the same type of traumatic injury but have two very different outcomes. And I don't know what it is that distinguishes it. I suspect there's something genetic that we don't fully grasp that's in the middle. But I do know that trauma, one thing that I've learned for what I do know of it, has to be managed holistically. You need, You need the rules. You need to take care of yourself, the rest of your body. You have to go into rest. It can't just be this part and then the rest, as separate entities. They have to be managed together.
Because I was going to ask, how do you heal your brain?
Time. That goes back to that word again. Time. And then what they find is exercise, which is coming out to be what you eat, avoiding inflammation, and avoiding future injuries. Biggest is prevention. But after that, it's time and then exercising it. Get sleep. Sleep has now become hugely important, that most people didn't realize how important it is. We used to all brag how little we had. Now we're considered stupid for missing it. That's the type of stuff that we have to be focusing on.
I just did this whole training on finding your purpose and Rethreaded process, and like I have this one slide, and it's like, really what you need to do any of this is sleep, eat, exercise, hydrate, and breathe. I mean,
you hit it. That's
those things.
That's brain health. That's brain health. But that's body health. That's everything. And that's what's funny. Even in Alzheimer's, where everyone is like talking about there's so much money thrown at Alzheimer's and everything. What we keep finding out is when you're not connected socially, when you're eating poorly, when you're not sleeping, when you have an injury, when the rest of the body they're the ones most prone to have the problems. It's like, it's the same pattern, just different organ over and over and over again. That's the real key to everything.
And then when you're in trafficking, you're not eating healthy, you are not sleeping, you are not, exercising.
No.
There's no care of self. Or the same thing, I guess, when you're in a traumatic situation as a doctor, if you are all the time inundated over and over and over and over again with patient after patient after patient, same thing, right?
Yeah, you're just kind of subjected to this kind of numbness, to numbing effect that just occurs because you can't react to each thing because you haven't recovered from the other one. And so that's what all of this is about, recovery. All those elements, it allows you to time for you to recover so that you can get ready for the next thing. Mm. I'd love to tell everyone, there will not be a next thing, but there's always something.
Always.
So you have to have that resilience to get you there. And those are the elements that do get you there. So what you were told as a kid, let me save you a lot of healthcare dollars. That's
right.
That's the key, isn't
that crazy? It is true. And then I think about what is stopping me from eating healthier. I'm
with you. It's like passing that deli or the Whataburger or the and just fill in the blank. Yes. Sometimes I see that, I'm always amazed when not to bring out like a specific product, but when I see Chick-fil-A and I see that it's 17 cards deep, and I'm like, really? There's some healthy options on that menu, but wow.
Do I get the healthy options? No.
Everyone goes for the waffle fries. So it's
and the fried nuggets,
right? Exactly.
None of them grilled,
right? So you get the picture. We have so many options, but when you're tired, you're going to pick the bad options because that's the recovery. Because it's easy and it's just speaks to you. As opposed to, I'm going to go home, I'm going to stop at the store and pick up some veggies and salad. I'm going to prep a nice, healthy salad. When you're exhausted, that's not what you want. You want a big bowl of pasta.
I came home from, I did that training, and then I just moved, and I was buying a house. I bought a house and had closed out the other one. And I finally sat on my couch and I put on Grey's Anatomy and took a can of Cheetos and ate it all.
That gets us
nowhere.
No, and this is why I said you have to be on your game. Sadly, in our food, and I'm glad you bring up Cheetos. I like Cheetos too, but for stuff like that, I mean, those are designed for them to be somewhat addictive. I mean, we could talk it all. I mean, we could go on and on a different show, but I mean, they're just, and so the only way you fight those addictions when you're not, when you're able to think clearly and all that stuff. Cheetos is great. I mean, it's wonderful, but those foods are all designed to kind of get you hooked. And I think we're just beginning to understand that. Well, the companies know that.
The companies know that, yeah.
They know that loud and clear. But it's how you make those choices. That's what we have to get, because there's so many pitfalls these days.
And it just builds on each other, right? I mean,
it really does.
A woman coming out of trauma, Gloria, our program director, she started to learn more and more about trauma, whatever. And like one of the big things is we're chronically hydrated in our culture. And so we had women coming out of severe complex trauma drinking coffee or energy drinks, sometimes 3 or 4 energy drinks a day, and having zero capacity. So we culturally, Gloria started to talk about water, got everyone water things, and and slowly over time, the culture has changed at Rethreaded, and now it's like culturally, we all know that we should drink water, and we do.
That's a good thing. That's community that's getting the right decision. I won't even start. Energy drinks are just, I think, just a big no-no. Because it's just
what happens that they're so.
It's very stimulating. It's very. They are loaded with caffeine and other products that are just there to speed you up. Speed you up in a way that is, it may build up that energy burst like sugar, which, by the way, most of them are high sugar, and then that sugar fall, that crash that occurs after you've had a big burst of sugar. That's pretty harsh. So, sure, you can get the energy break, but at a cost of, trying to recover from it. And there are, it speeds up your heart, blood pressure goes up. I mean, anything that your behavior starts, you think in a way that's not always so clear, but more like, what's going, like kind of like that in almost panicky tone.
Hyper vigilant almost.
Exactly. And it's very hard to get out of that loop. I know people do it because they think they're going to do better on a test and stuff. Okay, I'll give you that, but ultimately that's not sustainable. It just isn't, and you run into a lot of problems with it.
Because it's the opposite that will make it better. It's eating the good food, making sure you get enough sleep, so you can study. I mean, it's all opposite of what we do to ourselves.
It's just we've had it ingrained. And
it's funny how simple it is, and not that simple, but the answers are simple, right?
The answers are always simple. It's just that moment-to-moment choice, just to get it right. That's the hard part, but that's the human part, and that's the part that you're always struggling to get to. But yes, the answers they're oddly.
I know, because when you were when I asked you like, how do you heal your brain, it's not what I thought you would say, but
no, I mean, it isn't a $1 million drug or anything along those lines. It is just old-fashioned exercise, time, rest, sleep. It's and good nutrition. It's all of those. That's the key.
I don't know what your spiritual beliefs are, but it's like God created us to heal, right?
Yeah, I am a believer, and I will say yes, that is the way that it's intended. Whether we choose to follow it is a different story.
It is, because it's so easy to be distracted and on my phone or watching Grey's Anatomy, eating Cheetos.
Sounds lovely, though. I mean,
there was a little bit of joy in it.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. There are some positives. I hear you, but that's where we're at.
Oh, but then I had the worst stomach ache, and I had to go back out into the world, and I was
there you go. There you go. You see?
Yeah. I went to my friend's house and I was like, I am 47 and I just ate a thing of Cheetos and have a stomach ache to deal with my stress. Oh my God.
But at least it was hopefully it was enjoyable. Once off is okay.
Yeah.
It's just not persistently.
What about Diet Coke?
Diet Coke, I'm not going to say, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a lot of chemicals. Tastes great. I love it. I like Coke Zero, actually.
Me too. Cherry Coke Zero.
But I try not to, because at the end, I do get jittery when I start drinking. Because if I have one, I want to have two. If I have two, I want to have three. So I try to kind of balance it out, go as low. Because you do just, the key is to kind of feel what does this make me feel at that moment, and to try to remember that. But I know what you mean. I like those pleasures too.
Is there anything that you would like us to know about your world and healing and health? And
I think I've kind of conveyed the biggest things are the solutions are simple. They're just hard to adhere to. And that we all go through it. It's human. And to sometimes be kind to ourselves. Maybe that's my last of little piece of advice. Forgive yourself. Be kind to yourself. It's not going to be perfect every day. I struggle with it. Everyone does. And tomorrow's another day. That's the key. Start again.
There goes the day by day thing, right?
It's the time.
It's the time.
But
okay.
I know by tonight I'll probably be looking to see what season of Grey's Anatomy after all of this stuff, just since we've been bringing it up, to see what's missing. But nonetheless, that's how I'd leave it right there.
Well, I'm an expert up until like episode season 14 or something.
Gosh.
If you need to know.
I know it's season 30 or something. Is that right?
It's something crazy.
But either way, I'll leave it with that.
Yeah. And I'm just seeing McDreamy's still alive and the ones I'm watching. So
no comment, right?
Well, it was fun. It was fun to get to know you.
Oh, it was fantastic.
And you have a spark.
Well, you're very kind.
A spark of, I don't know what it is. There's a joy there that makes me smile. Look at it. It just makes me smile.
You feel
it's lovely.
And the feeling is mutual. I've been smiling and enjoying this. And all I can say, thank you so much for having me.
And thank you so much. And continue your good work and to see people and educate us. And make sure you check out his podcast. We will put a link in the comments. So thank you and many blessings.
Thank you. And to you as well. We look forward to having you back on our show.
I would love it. Let's do it. All right. Thank you.